Hello there. We are live, and today I'm so excited to be talking about 5 signs of people pleasing. And there are a lot more signs than that, but 5 signs. And one of them, or a telltale sign, is are you being kind to other people? Are you actually being nice in order to avoid being rejected or abandoned or not liked? So that's what we're talking about today in today's live stream. I'm going to put something in the chat. So, are you being kind or just being nice? And ask your questions. If you're here watching live, please put your questions in the chat about how to know the difference between being nice or being kind. And hopefully you can hear me and everything is copacetic this week. I had a little technical issues last week with Wi-Fi, so we're going to jump right in. But if someone's here and can put in the chat, yes, that they can hear me, that would be awesome. So I do, as always, have a little bit of notes about being kind or being nice. What's the difference, right? A lot of people think that it's a potato kind of thing, where what's the difference between being kind and being nice? And I have learned that there is a huge difference. And being nice, right? Trying to make other people happy, being liked, not wanting to be rejected. Being nice got me in a lot of trouble in my life. And I don't mean like physical trouble from other people, but it got me in a lot of relationships that were unhealthy for me. And I just thought that I wasn't being nice enough. And so I would continue to be nicer in order to make the other person happy, or in order to hopefully have them be nicer back to me. And being nicer does not mean that is going to be reciprocated. And in fact, it usually is the opposite, because when we're being nice, we are allowing other people to mistreat us, to maybe emotionally, mentally, maybe even physically abuse us. So we're going to talk about that today, the difference of being kind versus being nice. And I'd love to know in the comments, do you think that were you taught that they were the same thing? Because that's part of that's where this comes from, is especially as a woman, right? You were probably taught when you were young that to be nice, right? That girls were nice, that they didn't speak up for themselves, that they didn't speak back, that they didn't say no. And that taught us to be nice and to not be kind. Speaking our truth maybe was punished, right? Because we spoke up for what we thought or believed when we were young, maybe that got punished. And so you learn to believe or to not speak up in that way, because as a young child, our ultimate goal, right, was to be accepted, to stay in the family unit, to not be rejected. And so it became a safety mechanism in order to stay within the family unit and be protected. So we were conditioned to be nice. And again, that maybe meant not telling our truth, right? Covering up what we were feeling, because maybe in the past, speaking what we actually felt when we were young got punished or got us in trouble. So I'd love to know in the comments, do you think that being nice and being kind are the same thing? And were you raised to, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all, right? And so we grew up then as adults thinking that this was the way we were supposed to be nice and to take care of other people, even at our own expense. So here are the key distinctions between being nice and being kind. Being nice means not rocking the boat, right? Not walking on eggshells in order to not upset anyone, not making waves, no matter what, right? But being kind is being willing to tell the truth, even if you know that it might make waves, that it might rock the boat, that someone might be upset. That is the kind thing to do. Being nice is being the peacekeeper, right? How many of you learned that peacekeeping kept you safe, kept you from being rejected, kept you liked and in the in crowd maybe, right? But peacekeeping actually, because we're avoiding the discomfort of speaking our truth, peacekeeping actually, in essence, serves us. It doesn't serve the other person. It doesn't serve the relationship. So being kind is, again, speaking our truth and knowing that it may be uncomfortable. It may be uncomfortable for us to speak our truth. It might be uncomfortable for the other person to hear our truth. But that is the kind way to be, because only when we're speaking our truth are we actually able to deeply connect with other people, because we are being our true authentic selves. And this doesn't mean speaking our truth in a mean or demeaning way or any way condescending. It means speaking what is true for me, right? In order to allow the other person to understand who I am. If I don't speak what's true for me, the other person can never understand who I truly am and where I'm coming from. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they'll accept my truth, but it's still, in order to be kind and to not be nice and people please, we must speak what's true for us. Again, it's not in order to be better than or to be right. It is to simply speak what is true for us. And again, where this niceness comes from, where this belief that being nice is a good thing, where that comes from is, we were told when we were young, be good, don't talk back, do as you're told. Again, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. I don't know how many times I heard that saying in my life. Any of you, did you get that when you were young? I actually had someone comment on a video of mine that she was told that she was prettier, that girls were prettier when they were quiet, right? So we learned to be nice and pleasing, and we turned into people pleasers if we grew up holding on to that belief, and that that's where we got validation and our worthiness and our value from. We felt like it came from being nice and people pleasing and keeping other people happy. But that's not where our worth and value come from. So again, we were conditioned to be nice, and we were actually conditioned almost against being kind, because again, we were taught to not speak up and, not talk back. And a lot of times I think children aren't necessarily speaking back, they're not talking back, they're actually expressing themselves. But we were taught, many of us, I believe I was for sure, to not express myself, that expressing how I felt was wrong, that my emotions were wrong. And so all of these things, because before the age of 8, 7 or 8, what we hear, what we experience, what we learn, what we're told, that goes into our subconscious. It becomes the program that runs 95% of our life. Our subconscious mind is running the show. And those things that we experienced go in, just like putting software in us. If we were born as a blank computer, all those experiences become the software that the computer runs on. And now I'm a 62-year-old woman, and if I hadn't examined all of this programming, all this software that was put in when I was young, I would still be running that program that I learned or that I was given when I was 5, 6, 7, right? Anybody else have that experience where maybe you're not getting what you want out of life now, right? You're being so nice, right? You're making other people happy, but you're not feeling maybe happy or content yourself. And that's because it's not the niceness, it's not the programming that gets us what we want. So, what the ultimate cost of always being the nice one, right? Always being the one to put other people first, putting yourself on the back burner, uh, telling yourself that you'll take care of your own self when everyone else is taken care of. That's being nice. That's not being kind. And the ultimate cost of that is that you give up your own inner peace in order to keep outer peace. In order to make other people happy, you give up a piece of your own happiness in order to do that, a huge piece of your own happiness, because there are always going to be people that need things. So if you're constantly giving from an almost empty cup, you can't feel that inner peace when you're constantly trying to please other people. So the 5 signs, and again, there are many more, that you are being nice and not being kind. The first one is that you're ignoring your boundaries, or maybe you think that boundaries are wrong or mean or aggressive. Um, I used to think that women that had boundaries and that, knew where to draw the line, that they were aggressive and that they were bitchy. And I didn't want to be that woman. And so I thought, well, I'm not going to speak up like that because that's just wrong. I just thought it was wrong. And that wasn't being nice to me. But I had this programming that told me that I couldn't that I shouldn't, that it was wrong to speak up that way. Now I realize that that was coming from me, a place of me not having boundaries and not knowing what boundaries truly were. And so when we're being nice, we are ignoring our boundaries. We're letting people step all over us. We're letting people maybe belittle us, talk down to us, um, mentally, emotionally, physically abuse us, and all in the name of being nice, that I shouldn't speak up for myself, that I shouldn't stand up for myself because my inner child, that younger person, was taught that doing that was wrong, that that was not a nice thing to do. So that is one sign that you are being nice and not being kind. And if you're being kind, you would be honoring your own needs and saying no to other people with integrity, right? You would be speaking up for yourself. I'm looking at my notes. So being nice, again, is keeping everyone else happy at your own expense, at your own well-being. Being kind would mean speaking up and saying, "No, that doesn't work for me anymore. Maybe it did in the past, but I am no longer willing to tolerate that. I'm no longer willing to put up with you speaking to me that way. If you continue to do that, I will walk away." If you're on the phone with someone and they're belittling you or speaking to you in a way that is not honoring of you, and you know it, you can feel it in your gut, you can feel it, your heart maybe starts pounding, you get upset, maybe you feel horrible about yourself, but it's not about you, it's about them speaking to you that way. So you have the right to say, if someone is speaking to you in a way that is not respectful, that is disrespectful of you, if you continue to talk to me that way, I'm going to hang up the phone. and then they utter more words and you hang up the phone. So that is a way to honor your boundaries, to be kind versus being nice. Remember, kind is speaking our truth, even when it's uncomfortable for us or the other person. But until we do that, we are just being nice. We're not wanting to rock the boat. We're not wanting to make them uncomfortable. We're not wanting to be rejected, avoid, or have conflict or confrontation. And so we continue to be nice instead of speaking up for ourselves. The next sign that you're being nice instead of being kind is, again, I just spoke about this a little bit, is avoiding conflict or confrontation, right? When we keep the peace, when we suppress our truth, that is in the name of, again, avoiding that conflict or confrontation. Maybe the other person has blown up on you before, gotten really upset. Maybe they have, what's the word? Maybe they have retaliated against you speaking up in the past. And so you don't want to feel that retaliation again. But in order to break free of this always being nice and putting other people first at your own expense, we have to start getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, because until we do, we will continue to people please and to placate other people and to allow them to get away with disrespecting us. And sure, you might lose relationships in the midst of speaking up for yourself, but wouldn't you rather know that this person was in your life because of what they got from you versus what it was about the relationship, that the relationship was reciprocal and worked both ways. That is what you will get ultimately when you start being kind versus being nice. You will get relationships that are reciprocal and not one-sided. When you're being nice, even though you may not realize it, these relationships are one-sided. A lot of people are hanging out with you because of your niceness, not because of necessarily they're hanging out with you because of what they're getting from you. There's something there in the relationship of your niceness that's magnetizing these people to you. And I've gone into this in other videos that our niceness also is a magnet for toxic people because they know they can control you. They know that they can feed their insatiable need to be in control with someone who is always being nice, always being giving, always overlooking bad behavior because and saying they didn't mean it. They didn't, I'll give them another chance, right? That's being nice. Being kind is speaking up and saying, I no longer am willing to live and tolerate this disrespect. And it doesn't have to be geared at them. That could be you saying that to yourself. I am no longer willing to tolerate being talked to this way. And so, what action am I going to take in order to stand up for myself? And typically, that would be then speaking your truth, which is kindness, not being nice. The third way you can know if you're being nice versus being kind, and that is when you are pretending. Are you saying, it's fine? Or telling yourself, they didn't mean it. I'll give them another chance, right? That is pretending. That is pretending that you being hurt doesn't actually hurt. That you can deal with it. That if you admitted that you were hurt, that it was admitting weakness. No, that is you being kind and speaking your truth and being willing to be uncomfortable in order to be authentic and to allow the other person to get to know the real you, in order to allow them to take responsibility for their own actions, for their own behavior, for their own words. But when we say, it's fine, we never allow the other person to step up and take responsibility for their role in the relationship. And when we say it's fine, it's also us not taking responsibility for our role in the relationship. So if you want to know if you're being nice versus being kind, ask yourself, how often am I pretending in my life? How often am I pretending that something didn't hurt me, that 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 didn't bother me? Am I pretending to not tolerate things even in my own self? Am I tolerating overeating? Am I tolerating drinking too much to numb the pain? How much am I pretending that the behaviors that I have are justified, right? Because of what I'm putting up with in my life. The fourth sign that you are being nice and not kind is that you are afraid of being the bad guy, right? Many times we stay in unhealthy relationships and or in unhealthy roles in order to avoid upsetting someone. And that is being nice, right? That is not wanting to rock the boat. That is walking on eggshells. That is peacekeeping, external peacekeeping versus doing what we need to, speaking our truth, being kind in order to keep our own peace. So we abandon our own needs, our own desires, our own wants, our own we abandon ourself in order to keep the other person happy, in order to keep them comfortable, in order to keep them even keep them in our lives. And this is being nice. We don't want to be the bad guy. That's being nice. Sometimes sometimes it might take, because in order to stop feeling like the bad guy, we have to understand that speaking up for ourselves isn't wrong, right? But we were taught that speaking up for ourselves was wrong. And so my subconscious, my unconscious pattern is that when I speak up for myself, I'm the bad guy. Toxic people in particular are going to take advantage of that type of thought pattern because they want you to feel like the bad guy. That is how they stay in control. So many times, this bad guy um, thought, it's a false thought. It's based on something that we were taught to believe, that if I speak up for myself, I'm the bad guy. And that is just absolutely not the truth. So, if you want to know if you're being nice versus kind, ask yourself, am I avoiding being the bad guy? And then what would it take to stop worrying about being the bad guy? Because that is just a label. Speaking your truth is not wrong, it's not bad. So you may have to tolerate the uncomfortable feeling for a while of, yep, I'm just going to be the bad guy. I'm going to speak my truth. If that's what it takes to stop being the bad guy and to protect my own peace, my own sanity, my own power, then okay, I'll be the bad guy. If that's what I need to tell myself in order to start speaking up for myself enough that I stop feeling like I'm in the wrong, that I'm the bad guy. What questions do you have about being nice versus being kind? I'd love for you to put them in the chat. Please, like, or even comments. Just comment about what's showing up for you in what I'm talking about? We're talking about the 5 ways to know, the 5 signs of, are you being nice or are you being kind? And how, and what the difference is between those. The 5th sign that you are being nice and not kind is that you're being unkind to yourself. And this is the biggie, right? You are, again, avoiding discomfort by numbing, by breaking promises to yourself, telling yourself you'll eat better tomorrow and then you don't, telling yourself you'll do something and then you don't follow through, keeping commitments with other people at all cost, but not keeping your own commitments to yourself. This is being nice to yourself. So hiding from your truth, right? Numbing, doing things to avoid looking within and admitting. And sometimes it takes someone else to help us work through that. And I would love, if that's you, I would love to be your guide for that. The My calendar link is in the description of this video, so if you want to book a free call where I we can talk about what you have going on in your life and how I can help you, please feel free to book that call and we'll chat about what resources I have for you, whether that's how I can help you directly or things I've been through, like Codependence Anonymous, how it helped me. Would that be a fit for you? Maybe a book that you could read, a resource like that to help you start breaking free of this niceness, this pattern, this conditioning that you were given in your life when you were young, because it's just a habit to be nice. And habits that are started that we live in can be broken. We can replace them with a new habit. And the new habit that I would help you with is to be kind versus being nice. So not being kind to yourself is the biggie. When if you are struggling with negative thought patterns, self-talk that is belittling to yourself, uh, not being able to lose weight, not being able to take care of yourself, thinking that other people always need to come first, having feelings of guilt, all of those are signs of not being kind to yourself. Right? A big one is, again, this negative self-talk of speaking negatively to yourself, and I'm planning to do a live on that in the future. So if you would love that, please comment so that I know that that's something that you want to hear more about self-talk. So not being kind to yourself. This is the 5th sign that is, again, the doozy, and letting yourself off the hook in order to stay comfortable is a lot of times where this comes up. That is not being kind to yourself. Letting yourself off the hook in order to not feel the discomfort of what it would be to speak your truth or to take action on something that you have been putting off for yourself. That is niceness, right? That is when we let ourselves off the hook, we're not being kind because we know that's going to come back to bite us in the butt, but we're not willing to take the uncomfortable step now in order to start down this path of healing. And that path, a lot of times we know can be painful. And so we avoid it. But until we're willing to look at these things, you can see a doggy tail in the background, until we're willing to look at these things, we are going to continue to not have the reality that is our life that we want. And we're going to continue. And believe me, I'm not pointing the finger at anyone. I lived this life for 55 years of thinking that what I was wanting was outside of me, and that if I would just be nicer, that then I would get what I was wanting. And what I got how I got what I was wanting in my life was to start speaking my truth, to start being kind to others by speaking my truth and to speak my truth and be kind to myself. So, this being kind to yourself means being honest with yourself about what needs to change in your life. So, an action that I would love for you to take is to take out a piece of paper. I love giving little actions, but that have big impact, right? This is where the transformation comes. Take out a piece of paper and write down 10, minimum 10 things where you are not being honest with yourself. Maybe do that on the left-hand side of the paper, and then on the right-hand side of the paper, alongside of each one of those 10 things, what would be an action where you were being honest with yourself about that thing? So do that. I can tell you, that exercise alone, which will maybe take you 20 minutes, will have a huge impact in your life because you can see when we see things in black and white, it brings awareness to us that maybe we didn't have before. And again, if I can help guide you through that, book that free consultation call with me and we can talk about how I can help you, what resources I can suggest for you or provide for you. And let's start you on that path of being kind and speaking your truth and being honest with yourself and all the people in your life and see how your life transforms. Because I can tell you that it does transform when you start speaking your truth. It may not be initially in ways that you necessarily want, but ultimately the transformation, oh, it gives me goosebumps, is incredible. It is absolutely incredible because you can find happiness and peace and contentment with yourself. And that is a beautiful gift. So I want you to pick your hard, right? A lot of times we say, oh my gosh, but it's so hard to speak my truth, right? Because I'm going to hurt someone, I'm going to disappoint them. Maybe they're going to reject me, they won't like me, right? But we have to pick our hard. Would we rather live in these false relationships and maybe demeaning relationships, diminishing relationships with others and with ourselves? Or would we rather live in this content, peaceful place that we know that we're being our genuine, authentic self that shows up for ourselves, that we have our own back, and where other people are showing up for the genuine, authentic me as well? So when we avoid truth, we're going to stay stuck. When we speak truth, when we become that genuine, authentic, kind person, the person that's serving other people, not pleasing them, then that is when we find peace. So again, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. I would love to hear any comments that you have in the chat. After the call, if you're watching the replay, please put your comments in the chat and I read everyone and I respond to as many as I can. Thank you for being here. And I would love to hear your comments on the difference between being nice versus being kind. Have a great rest of your day.